Hello chickies, welcome to the Fully Booked Penguin channel. I am Hannah and today we are doing the in or out book tag. Now the original creator of this channel was Rick McDonald like 4 years ago, but I saw it on Katie's channel, Paperbacks and Ponytails. So I thought we may as well do this tag. It's sort of like a preferences or whether we want to see more of it or less than it. I might put the yeses on this side and the no's on this side. We'll have like a swipe left or swipe right, I don't know. We'll hit the yes button or the no button, depending on how I feel about this certain sentence. What it invokes in me. So we're going to start this challenge off. I've also added a couple which are more preferences. I don't feel like it needs to be like excluded from the publishing industry, but then I also have a preference on what I personally read. So I've added a few more notes in there as well. So let's begin. Also, if you can hear the birds, they're being quite vocal at the moment. I'm by the window, obviously, for lighting situation, and they're just having a fun time before the rain comes. There was like a few sprinkles earlier, so they're like, woo! So first up, we have reading the last page first. So this is where you flip to the back of a book, flip to the back, and you're like, oh yeah, that's how it ends. Some people say it's because they don't want to buy a book if they don't like the ending, and I must admit, not something I do. I think it's an out. However, I personally, with movies, I will look up the plot. I will find out the ending. Which you might say, you actually invest more time reading than a movie, so the time wastage is more to do with a book, but with movies, I have to watch it with high anxiety, and I hate that. Whereas most of the books I read, I'm pretty much guaranteed a good ending at some level. The books I go into, usually I'm guaranteed a happy ending, and so therefore it's not quite the same. Whereas movies, you're never quite sure. And so to save myself the anxiety of watching a movie, I do read the synopsis or find out if the characters end up together. And I guess I would do that, but more as a who ends up with who, I will Google, and rather than reading the last page. I'm hypocritically a no when it comes to reading the last page, but I am the person that will spoil a movie for myself. I won't spoil it for anyone else, just for myself, so that I can watch it in happy peace. Next up, we have enemies to lovers. I am an out. I do not really enjoy enemies to lovers stories. Look, I know there's a whole thing about what is enemies to lovers. You know, there's usually the girl is annoyed or dislikes the bloke, and the bloke is just fawning over her the whole time, but he's just got no social skills and is an idiot. And so that's what they count as enemies to lovers, and that is obviously not. Then there's the ones that are like, it has to be war. Like two sides of a war, and they literally fight each other and like would literally kill each other. And then they grow to, oh, maybe this other person has similar, like, views of the world. We're just not meeting eye to eye. And we have these other founding problems. And then they fall in love. I don't particularly like either of those scenarios. I am more a friends to lovers girly, and enemies usually I'm either annoyed with the girl for misunderstanding the guy, or I'm annoyed with the guy for being such a mean, like, infuriating bloke, and I'm just spend the whole book annoyed with either party or both. Therefore, for me personally, enemies to lovers is out, but I'm not judging anyone who likes that. If it's marketed as enemies to lovers, I am less likely to pick up the book. I will if I'm intrigued through other means, like actual blurb stuff or characters, but most of the time I'll be less likely to pick it up. Next up, we have dream sequences. I feel like I don't mind a dream sequence when done right. I mean, with a lot of these, it will just be if done right. But I kind of like a nightmare scene. You know, where they know it's a dream, but they have a nightmare. Then they wake up and they're like comforted, or you know, that's like their inner thoughts, their inner worries accumulate in a dream form. Because that happens to me. If I'm stressed in real life, it will come out in dream form. So for me, I relate to like the nightmare dreams or dreaming of that, rather than like they go through this whole thing and then they're like, actually this whole plot was a dream. And you're like, oh, great. So what was the point of all that? Other than to lull us into an incorrect, it's almost like an unreliable narrator situation. But I do like, yeah, the nightmare / they wake up, get comforted, or it shows the inner turmoil that maybe this tough character is like, I am fighting, I'm doing great, I'm handling the situation, but then they have these nightmares at night and they're like, cold sweats. You know, I do like that kind of dream. But I don't know whether that's what they mean by dream sequence, but that's my opinion. So I say in, if it's the nightmare comfort scenes, and out if it's we lull you into thinking this is the plot and then it's a dream. Juked you. Lost me as a reader. I may have forgotten this question and I'm inserting it now. So, love triangles. It is a out for me. I do not like love triangles. I always find that I end up cheering for the guy she doesn't end up with. Especially in situations where the girl really likes both and you just get so annoyed because she leads both on, but she can't make a decision, and meanwhile the two blokes are getting jealous at each other, and it's just an unhealthy situation all round. I like soulmates and just wonderful relationships from the get-go, and therefore love triangles is pretty much everything that isn't that. Usually you can tell which person's gonna end up together, like which of the three are gonna end up together, and yeah. Even in K-dramas, which has a lot of the love triangles, I often have second male lead syndrome. That's when you want her to be with the second lead, or you feel so sorry, you're like, he needs a happiness of his own that isn't with this silly girl. The most prevalent example of this is Cheese in the Trap, which I do not recommend anyone watch, because in that one she really should be with the second male lead and she isn't. And it is truly the worst case I've ever had of it, and even to this day I'm still annoyed with that show. So it was probably really this beginning of my dislike of love triangles, was that show. I'll still read a book if it has it in it. I've been reading The Naturals, which has a love triangle in the first one, and I hated that aspect of it, but I still read the book. But it's an out for me. Next up, we have Cracked Spines. I am out for this one. I don't mind if other people own books and they have cracked spines. I'm not going to be there like, oh my gosh, you are the most terrible person on earth. But me personally, I like to have... Also, this isn't a promo, this just happens to be the book I'm reading currently. I like that when it sits on my shelf, I have the perfect spine. It doesn't have creases. I consider cracked spines a bit like you receiving your book damaged. Like, you're like, oh, there's turned up things, or there's, like, if they have lines on the spine, you're like, oh, I bought this book and it's already damaged. And then some people purposely damaged it, so I guess that's a no. But yeah, I like to display. When I buy books, usually, most of the time it is because they are trophies on my shelf, and I don't want my trophies to be tarnished and banged up. So I'm a no to cracked spines. And I find most of the time you can read a book like that. You don't need a... Sometimes my covers get a little bent like that, but never the spine. Never the spine. So yes, for cracked spines. Next up we have more of a trope, which is back to my small town. Usually this happens in romances where they've gone to the big city or they left their small town and then they return, and usually it does incorporate like second chance romance. I actually like stories where they go back to their small town or hometown. However, it has to be done where they're not openly hating on this small town and then they slowly get converted because they fall in love with the bloke again. Or, you know, and I don't like that. I don't live or like living in the concrete jungle. I am a country girl. I like my space. I like being able to look across and see the view, see plants, see parks, mountains, nature. So if a character is openly like, oh, I'm gonna go back to my small town where like everyone knows everybody's business and it's just trash, I don't relate to that, and I kind of hate the character for that. But if it's like, I'm escaping the city and I can finally breathe again, and the character has always been a country person and has just returned from the concrete jungle to the place where really their soul likes, I'll enjoy that. I like exploring, you know, almost that nostalgic feeling of you have time, you have appreciation of nature, and sort of the small joys in life usually comes with going back to a small town. So that's what I like. But I'm not a big fan of the I hate this town. And it's small-minded people. So I guess I'm a yes. As I said with some of these, it's right situation. Correct writing techniques used that I like. So yes, let's go with yes. Next we have monsters are regular people. So this is sort of when people take vampires or werewolves, which, you know, classically are scary, horrible beasts and monsters, and they turn them into like your regular billionaire almost for the vampires. They're just billionaires who wear suits and they go around having a nice little time. They're just people, but they happen to drink blood, like humanizing the monsters. And I think that's what it's getting to. Almost converting monsters to people with powers rather than monstrous beasts who attack people and have evil sources. I personally like humanizing monsters. It's pretty much like, I have red hair, that person over there has brown hair, but in this case it's, I'm a fairy and over there is the werewolf, and it's just about a life. I actually enjoy that. I like a few urban fantasies like that. I love it. They each have their quirks because of their different societies, but they're pretty much just regular people. And I don't usually read books where they're just all evil monsters, scary like thrillers or anything, so I don't really read them. So I would say, yes, I am in for monsters are regular people. I don't read much monster stuff, but if the monsters are, as I say, werewolves and stuff like that, it's a yes from me. Or if it means that regular people can be monsters, as in humans can be just as evil as our fictional creatures, that scares me because it's true. And so I guess yes, but also for me reading, no, because I like to escape reality, and unfortunately people being monsters or the equivalent of these wretched creatures that are fictional, I like to escape from that. Next up we have a very easy one, and that is no paragraph breaks. I'm a no. I like things to look really nicely set out and with their breaks and where pauses in, say, scene, or you need to just switch focus. Love a paragraph break. As a writer, love a paragraph break. And also on the page, the formatting, I love the way it looks. It's not as daunting because when it's a huge paragraph, you're like, oh my god. In the writer sphere, you are actually told to add these breaks because to the eye and to the reader, it helps with the flow and the way the brain processes things. So therefore, having none of that, oof, could not be me. So therefore, big no to that one. Next up, we have one that I haven't really encountered in many books, but I know of, and that is multi-generational sagas. This happens in a lot of like romanticies or romances. I find that's a lot of where this happens. Think Sims Family. You make a character and then you follow them as they get married, and then at some point you switch to your focus to the children, and then you follow their little lives, you make them live their lives, and then they have kids, and so then you switch focus to the next one. And a lot of Sims players have like the entire map of their families. Think that, but in book form. So you follow one family and then so it switches to their children when they're gone on adventures or they're finding their love matches. Personally, I don't have a huge opinion on this, but I don't like it when they do make these multi-generationals and sort of when you go to the next generation, when they're writing those books, they almost ruin the generation before them. Like, you have those couples or that family, and when you get to the children, suddenly the family is like really bland, or they're really just not the way you picture them. And so you're like, it ruins the previous books. I've encountered that in a couple of romance series. Or when it just goes on too long, it's almost like the world has had its time, it's had its battles, but the author is almost repeating tales, but it's just different characters because it's the next family line. I think they're trying to lasso onto the love of that original series by making this next generation, and it loses its charm. And so I feel like they've just tried to stretch out that moneymaker too long. But there are some series like Tara Gracie who makes these multi-generational ones, and they stay interesting. You have it all tied together, but it's new plots and new intrigues happening. So I think she does it well. I wouldn't say I'm attracted to these books, but I'm not against them either. I don't know what to do in that situation. Me personally, I think I'm going to go with no for me personally, because it has to be very specific if they do it right for me to be like, oh yeah, this is good. But there's so many things that can go wrong with that. Next up, we have rereading. I am a yes to rereading. Personally, I have the books on my shelves and I go back because they're the favorites. I don't buy books just for buying books' sake. As I say, I'm a trophy keeper. So if I have finished or like that book or like the series, and I buy ahead of the series that I like, then they are on there because I like them and enjoy them. And so, of course, I'll be like, let me go back to that old friend and have a read through of that story again. So I am a rereader. I love going back to the charm or the characters that I love and adore, laugh with them, cry with them, want to hug them. So yeah, absolutely, I am a rereader. Next up, we have artificial intelligence. I am so anti-AI, especially, what is it? Generating AI? I don't think that's the right term, but I am so against AI. I think it is terrible for the creative industries, and I hate it so much that reading about it makes me stressed and depressed. So I am so no to artificial intelligence. Also, I may have done a course when I was learning writing and editing. I did a diploma, and one of my teachers loved stories about AI. That teacher wasn't the best. To put it nicely, me and this teacher did not see eye to eye. And it was quite a stressful, depressing time. And therefore, I hate subsequently any of these books about AI and like alternate realities and simulations. Like, I hate those sort of books because of trauma. I don't hate on people who like reading about artificial intelligence. I will not agree and will avoid people who agree with AI usage for creative creations. But otherwise, it's just a personal thing. I just avoid all those books and all those topics because I hate it that much. Next up, we have drop caps. For those who don't know what drop caps are, does this one have drop caps? It does. Let me find a better example. That's a starting quotation. Okay, so that there is a drop cap. So it's where they have the big first letter and then they have like a couple lines. Sometimes they have it covering 3 lines. I prefer the 2 lines for my own novels, so that's what a lot of them do, is 2 lines with the bigger first letter. And I personally think it adds a bit of whimsy, a bit of fantasy, a bit of class to books. I enjoy it. I know some people find it difficult to read those starting drop caps, but personally, love them. Have them in my own paperback and own work, so obviously I choose yes to the drop cap. I don't mind if it doesn't have the drop cap, but for me personally, if I look at a book and it has the drop cap, I'm like, that is classy. That is beautiful. Happy endings. I.e., does the story have to be happy at the end? And I'm a yes, it does. I do not like it when it ends on a melancholy or just ambiguous or just a terrible ending. I like to have my happiness, thank you very much. Even in my own books, it has to have a good ending. I sometimes call them good endings because there are times where things aren't tightly tied with like a bow. I find it sometimes unrealistic when they're like, and everything was so happy and they had 12 kids and everyone was woo! Like, I'm like, oh, all that in the final epilogue. For my own books, I like to have happiness, but I have room to growth. I like when the happy endings are still realistic for this situation. So if all my people have just gone on a battle and they lost people, and it gets to the end and they're like, woo, we defeated that guy and we kiss and everything and everyone's so happy. And I'm like, what about the loss and grief and trauma of that situation? Sometimes characters aren't just suddenly they've got all the joy in the world. So I don't mind if they've won, you've taken away that anxiety, but there's still life to be lived. So yeah, I like a good and happy ending. But I am cautious of the tie it with a bow really tightly, everyone's superiorly happy ones. I still can read them and I'm like, oh yeah, but it's not my best. It's not my perfect good happy ending. I don't ask for much, do I? Anyway, yeah, so yes, I am a happy ending. I do not like sad or ambiguous endings. Next we have plot points that only converge at the end. So I think this means that when you have two point of views and they seem to have no connection until right at the end of the book, where they're like, oh, and then they meet and this is why. And I guess I'm a no to that. I like everything to be spiderwebbed. It's all connected. Even if it's not obvious the first read through, on a second read through, I like to be able to see all the webs and the connections that have been hidden in the text. Like, oh, sneaky little author adding like just a few lines that actually you don't realize were connections. I love when that happens. And I do like where the point of views are in a similar area and they do cross paths, because I just prefer it that way rather than we're following Joe over here and then there's Margaret over here and you're like, okay, this is like two separate books, and then suddenly they're like, and then we put the books together right at the end. You're like, okay. So I'm a no if it's completely separate. Don't mind if there's the web situation where you're like, oh, this is good. And that is also why I love rereads, because in the first read through you might not catch all the hints. The second time through you're like, oh my, they said it, they had it the whole time. This author is a genius. So I'm definitely a spiderweb connections plot line rather than everything separate. Next up we have detailed magic systems. I am yet to come across a magic system that is detailed that I even care about, so I'm going to say no. I don't mind if it's interesting, but it has to be sort of played into and revealed with the characters and plot slowly. I like when magic systems are just magic. They don't need to be explained. It's just the way it is. I just prefer my magic to be magical. Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason for it half the time. I don't mind if the magic system has, like, laws to it. But if it's really in-depth, really, like, this detail, you need this and this, I don't go for books that say that in the description. Like, the system of the blah-de-blah, and I'm like, oh, it's like learning science for a made-up creation. You know, it's all made up, but there's so much information. And I know people are trying to be unique and create something that's never been done before, and, you know, a lot of readers love that, but I am not said reader. So for detailed magic systems, it's a no from me. Classic fantasy races. So these are elves and dwarves and halflings and I suppose merfolk and fae and all those sorts of things. I don't know specifically if fae is included, but I'm including it because there's the elves, which I consider the original fae. the fae of nowadays is almost like fairy and elves combined to make these pointy-haired humanoid creatures. Anyway, for the classics, elves, dwarves, I do enjoy it. It has to be done correctly, of course, but I enjoy reading a few elf stories or things like that. In fact, I have book ideas that incorporate elves, dwarves, humans, orcs. I'm a yes to the classic fantasy races. Next up, we have the Unreliable Narrator. I think I'm a no, but in the same sense, I kind of don't mind if we're following a character in third-person view. We're getting glimpses into their thoughts, but it's not omniscient. You don't know everything. You're not inside their head listening to all their thoughts. And I like it when it's in that view and you're following this character and then there's a plot twist because they've actually had a certain plan that you, again, on a reread you can see their plan, but on the first read through you don't have any knowledge of this plan really until it's revealed right at the end. And you're like, oh my, what a smart little character. I like those things, but in general, I don't think I enjoy the Unreliable Narrator. I like to be told what's going on, but I'm also okay with not everything being revealed straight in front of my eyes. I like a little bit of mystery, a little bit of hidden agenda or hidden stuff, but I think as the narrator, I prefer a no. Evil protagonists. I think I'm a no. I can't support a main character that is openly doing the wrong thing, likes murder and likes mayhem and all that. I don't mind following a slightly morally grey, so they do things but it's not out, like they're not like, I love murder and blood, and that is what I consider evil. I don't mind morally greys where they feel like they're doing the right thing or they know what they're doing is wrong, but it's a way of life for them. For example, I don't mind following like a thief who steals from people because that's how they've survived before, but now, even if it's changed now, they're still doing it. I want them to still know that what they're doing is wrong. But if they're just, they know it's wrong and they celebrate in the wrongness, which is what I consider evil, then I do not like following a evil protagonist. I had another point, but it seems to have left me. There's even a point where I feel like a character, even if they turn over to the good side, there are certain things where they can't really come back from. For example, I don't know the series, I don't know how it ends, but currently me and a friend are buddy reading the Throne of Glass series, and we've met Manon, and she's like another point of view, and I assume because we have her point of view that she is going to be turned good or to the good side, but she's also a witch that bites people and chews on people's blood and revels in evil acts. So I'm not enjoying that point of view because I'm like, she's evil. Even if she's been, you know, attacked and hunted down, she thrives on this evil connotation and this evil acts. And so I can't, you know, support her or even like her. So even if she ends up on the main character's side, if she still celebrates murder and death by the end, I still won't like that character. But again, I haven't read the series, so maybe that's the incorrect, you know, character example, but that's the first that came to mind is Manon. So for an evil protagonist, I am a no. Okay, next up we have The Chosen One. I am a no to The Chosen One. I feel like it's overdone. I don't mind if it's funnily done. Almost like a reverse Chosen One trope. I don't mind it in humorous situations, but if it's a serious, like, they've been foretold since the first beginning of time, or you will have to go through this, Selena Sodothian is a bit of a chosen one thing, because everyone's like, she is the one that has to do everything. Even if others are ending up helping her. Again, why am I using Throne of Glass? I don't know. Like, it's like, in the beginning, you've got, you You have an old ghosty queen, and Nehemiah pretty much making her the only one that can change and defeat the king. Everything rests on you and you're being a coward kind of situation. And I'm like, this is so flippin' annoying. Even if she manages to collect all the armies of the west, north, south, and east, even if she does all that, I don't know. I'm not a big Chosen One fan. I like my groups of people. I like to have a team and I like to have connections, and I just feel like that's kind of lost when you're focusing on one person's deeds and one person's destiny. That, or they get a bit pig-headed and you're like, oh please, you are not the chosen one. Even though they are. I wish they were. When the protagonist dies, I am a no to protagonist dying. I will not read a book where the protagonist ends up dead. Like, spoilers, the Divergent series. I see no point. Even if it's a heroic, self-sacrificing ending, it's just not my kind of book. I understand why people do it. I can understand a great many things on why authors choose to make the plot the way it is. But I personally do not like plots like that. So therefore, if you kill off your main protagonist, I will not enjoy it. Unless it's a plot where you kill off your protagonist and then you time reverse. Or it's an isekai where they die in the real world, they end up in a fantasy world. Then I'm a yes. I am 100% a isekai time loop person with a lot of manhwas. So in that case, yes, kill that protagonist off. But otherwise, if it's in books where that is not the tropes used, then it's a no. I feel sad when people kill off side characters. Like, I know it has to happen. I know. But I don't feel like the kill your darlings has to apply all the time to every single book. I like seeing them live and be happy. I read a book to be happy, not to be depressed and sad over a fictional character's death, So no, unless it's a sneaky one where they do die, but technically they relive that life, or they enter a fantasy world of the book they were just reading, or that's their fate in that book world and they change it. So yes. So a little yes, but actually no. Next one, which confused a lot of people, is French flaps. I did Google what this was, and it's like on a hardcover you have the dust jacket, which folds around the hardback interior. Only you don't have the hardback interior and the flap is cardboard or like the book cover, and it just folds in on itself. So you can open it up and it has like a map or extra information, and then you can close it, and that's part of the firmer book cover. Me personally, I don't mind if it's there, but usually I'm a no. I just like the way a book cover is. It doesn't need the extra layer. So for example, there would be this, but then it would continue. It would be double the size, or like have a bit more, and that would be folded in and down here. The front cover would be 2-layered, and then you could pop it out and have a look. Like a fold out situation. As a subtext to that, we also have half covers, which would have this, and then it has just this cover ends roughly there, and it has the book underneath. I never understood that, so I'm a no. In either case, probably a no. I don't see the point, and it's not really a feature that I gravitate towards. And next to that, we have Deckled Edges. I don't think I have any books that indicate that. I probably do. Probably these older ones. It's when there's the bumps. I think that's what they mean. Whereas regularly, it's flat. You don't have any of those bumps. So it's more like old bound stuff where there's the bumps. I assume that's what they mean. I looked it up and that seemed to be what they were getting at. Otherwise, what I thought may be the case is when the pages have little bumps in them, and that just looks rackety and like it could easily just be torn. So I think in either case I'm a no. I don't mind the look on old books, but as a rule, I'm going to say no to Deckled Edges. Next up we have signed author copies. I personally don't have any signed author copies. I personally don't go out of my way to get signed copies. I understand if an author is your favorite and it sort of adds to the special edition copy, or if you meet them in person and you want sort of a memory of that event, getting it signed is fun. It's like a fun event thing. I don't go out of my way to get that. If I'm just purchasing a book and it already is signed, but if you get it signed by the author when you're at the event or you meet them or they're a favorite, then yes. But I also understand some people, especially overseas, can't meet their author. So in that sense, I guess buying the signature is okay. But again, I feel like it doesn't have as much meaning then. So I'm not against people having signed copies. In fact, I go for it. But I personally don't collect them. So I think I'm a no, but I'm a yes. So if people came to me and were like, I want a signed copy, I would be like, absolutely. Here's your signed copy. And maybe I'd sign a few special editions if I ever am popular enough to make special editions. I would probably sign them just as a indication that it was a special edition along with the other features, I guess. But in general, I don't go out of my way to get signed copies. So, I don't know. Dog earring pages. I'm a no. I figure that when I buy a book and I see some of the pages have flipped over, I am saddened because I consider it damaged. I won't return the book or be like, oh my gosh, it's destroyed. I'll just unfold it, but it will make me slightly sad to see the little fold over. And I understand people own their books as long as they aren't thinking of selling their books. They can do whatever they want with them, same as cracked spines. It does decrease the value of those books, so if they did decide to hand that book collection on to someone and they were like, let me sell grandma's collection, it would decrease in value. So if that's like a big feature that you want to avoid. But otherwise, yeah, I consider it damage to the book. And if they don't know that they're going to love or keep the book, I would suggest people not do that. But if they're going through a copy that they're going to keep forever, no, dog ear away if you want. But it's a no from me personally. Next up, we have chapter titles instead of numbers. I'm a no, because this question is an instead of. I think it's fine when they have the number and like a chapter subtitle or a chapter title. I quite like that. It gives you the number, but it also gives you a fun little tagline that makes you go, oh, this is what this chapter is about. In the Emily Wilde series, she has no chapter number. She just has, I think, dates to start each chapter. That's the chapter title. And that is difficult because when you're reading the book and say you want to put on the audiobook, you have no clue which chapter you're up to. And some of the audiobooks just do it by chapter, like chapter 1, chapter 2. But it doesn't correlate to the book. So then you're like, okay, let me count how many chapters we're into this book. And then you can cross over to the audiobook. So I prefer to have like the number there to help with crossover reading preferences. And it does help with accessibility for those who have to do that or prefer to do that, whether because it's easier to read stuff that way or because they need that assistance. So for chapter titles instead of like just chapter titles, I'm saying no. But if you have the number and the chapter titles being unique, then that's probably my preferred method for doing that. Now for my preferences, I thought I'd add them in here. I prefer third person because I like seeing the characters' names and I like being in that sort of position rather than the I voice, because half the time I do not think that. And I know it's kind of like if I was telling you something, I would use I. So when I tell you, I'll still pick up books no matter what point of view they use. But I prefer third person. These are writing terms, and you probably as a reader don't pick up on any of this, but these are just preferences. As for tense, I realized I definitely like past tense more than any other tense. For example, this one, the last tagger, it is present tense. So, for example, now my thoughts are racing. I race through the undergrowth, followed by cursing officers, mentally weighing my options. So I realized I very much prefer past. I can read present, as I say. For me, reading past tense is easier than reading present. So in that sense, I prefer past tense. I know in some circles, third person is not a liked person point of view, but I prefer it, and yeah, I prefer past tense. So I don't know if that interests anyone. I just felt like it needed to be said because I picked up that book and I was like, oh, wait, something's off here. What is it? And I identified it as being first person present tense, and I was like, my brain was just needed adjusting to the style of writing. But they're just stylistic choices. I can read both, and you know, I won't mark down a book for being either. But that's just preference. That's how it is. And that brings us to the end of the in or out book tag. So thank you for the creator. It was 4 years ago. And thank you for Ashley, who inspired or tagged Katie, and Katie for making her video, and then I did this video. It's a little flow on of events right there for you. Thank you to both of them, or all of them, all the parties involved in this process. If you have your own thoughts or theories, I don't know why you would have theories about it, but opinions, leave them below in the comment section. I will have below the list of questions or ins and outs that I used as well, so you can quickly squiz there for a rundown as well. But for now, that brings us to the end of this in and out challenge, and I hope you enjoy, and I hope you join me for my next video, whatever it happens to be. Probably a TBR video. Until then, peace.
T26 끝.